Creating a mask based on selection tools like Magic Wand, Quick Selection, and then use the brush tool is only one way. But you can also create masks with vector shapes and the pen tool. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in this example. So first of all, we need to decide when it is useful to work with vector shapes or the pen tool. And the easiest way to explain it is that if you have a very clean cut edge, usually that's what you will get with objects like cars, clothes, furniture, and so on and so forth, or even animals in case they don't have fur. So anything that doesn't have a soft edge selection will let itself to be selected quite nicely with shapes or pen tool. First, what I would like to show you as an example is masking this periscope out and placing it into this background. And when you look at this object, you can see it's made up of geometric shapes. And I already attempted to select it in a previous example just by using the rectangular marquee tool. But here I'm going to show you a much better technique. So what I do normally is to create a vector mask by using a very general shape. So in this case, we can use the pen tool to start with, which will create a rough selection of the parts that we will need. But instead of using the shape mode, I normally switch to path mode when I use the pen tool for selections. So I'm just going to create a rough estimate. And you see, I just click around this object, and I go outside of the canvas there, and then I click on the first point to finish this path. So it's quite similar actually, the approach to using the lasso tool. But because here we are going to work with vector shapes, I already started using a vector-based tool. So we have the anchor points ready. Now all we need to do is to turn this into a vector mask, which you can do under Layer, Vector Mask, and choose Current Path. Or if you prefer to use the icon at the bottom of the Layers panel, just remember to hold down Command or Control when you click on that. That way you will get the same result as from the menus. So this will create the vector mask, and it looks slightly similar to a pixel mask, with the only difference that here the hidden parts will be gray instead of black. That's how you can tell quickly whether you have a vector mask or a pixel mask. So gray hides, white shows in this case. And the good thing about the vector mask is that you can keep adjusting it using vector tools like the direct selection tool. If I select any of these anchor points, I can adjust it and move it closer. See how quick and easy that is. Dragging it out, I can reveal details. So if I accidentally cover up parts that we need, I can always drag these parts out to reveal more details. But instead of relying only on the pen tool, because we have such good forms and shapes here, I'm going to switch to shape tools. And let's just start with the rectangle tool and concentrate on these bits here at the bottom. So I'm just going to zoom closer, and using the shape tool, again, I switch to path mode. So I don't want to draw shape layers. I want to add paths to this vector mask. Before I use it, I also have to make sure that my previous path is not selected. So normally what I do is simply click on the vector mask once or twice until I have no path selected. So I can see the anchor points are not highlighted. That means I can start a new path. And before I draw that, I make sure this option is selected, the Combine Shapes option. So once that's selected, I can now start drawing my shape. And I'm just going to draw a very rough estimate, which covers up this area here. Then I'm going to place. Then I am going to switch back to the pen tool and add a new point here on the path. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click on that point once more. That will create a corner point, so it won't have any curves around it. I will do the same here on the right side. So at the point and then Alt or Option click on it once more. We will have to repeat this a little bit further down. So I just zoom closer so you can see what I'm doing. Click and Alt click again, and then click and Alt click again. Now the reason why I've done this, because now we can switch to the direct selection tool and align these points onto these parts here. And now you can see why we needed those 2 points. And then I can drag this point there, this point here, that point up there, and we have almost a perfect selection. Now we just need to match these points up here on the top, and that looks good to me. We could do the same thing here on the top. If I use the pen tool again, I could add one point there, another point here, and then using the direct selection tool, the white arrow, we can drag these up and see here, I actually keep the handles on my path because I need that curved path there on the left. And I will do the same here on the right, just drag it up like that. Now I could continue adding these parts here as well, but what I can also do is to use an ellipse instead. So I switch to the ellipse tool, have that also set to path and combine shapes, and then start drawing. Now remember, you can use the space to position your shape while you are drawing it. So hold down the space bar, you can position it, but I'm quite happy with that result, and I will just repeat the same thing for the top detail as well, something like that. So we already covered this bottom section with the paths, and I don't actually see my result yet, but I will see that very soon. I just want to cover everything at this stage. So I'm going to do this center detail here, and remember, we couldn't really adjust our selection perfectly because it's not a perfect ellipse. So still, we can use the free transform tool, although we are working with just paths and not shapes. So having that path selected, I can go to edit, free transform path, and I can adjust it until it gets to the shape that we need. Something like that. And I'm actually happy with that, so I'm just going to press enter. Then let's switch back again to the rectangle tool and draw another shape here. Again, I'm using the space bar. Then once I'm ready, I can switch to the direct selection tool and adjust each point individually like that. Let's go on the other side. Again, switch back to the rectangle tool, draw another shape, and I'm going to just speed up the workflow from now on, just so you can see the final result and how we will turn these shapes into an actual selection. So there we have all the shapes that we need for this vector mask, and you can see all of them are here within the vector mask. So all the paths I added are all in the same vector mask. Now what we need first of all is to make them work is to remove our rough path that we created first. So if I select that, I can just press backspace, and that already gives us a good indication of the outline. To remove the center bits, we will have to be a little bit more tricky than that, because what we need mainly is this shape. In the middle, I have this path, the circle, and this has to be set to subtract. Now, if that doesn't do anything, that's because it's not high enough in the structure of these paths. So if I go here and choose bring shape to front, then it will definitely hide everything there. Unfortunately, that hides too much now. What we need to do now is to select the shapes that we have to see and bring those to the front, like this one. Then this one here also bring to front. Select that, bring to front, and also these at the bottom, bring to front, and bring to front. Notice that I also created these little paths with the pen tool close up here, which are also used to remove or subtract those parts. So I'm going to set them to the front and also set them to subtract. So that way I can make sure that they do whatever I wanted to do with them. So there's a subtraction, and then do the same thing with these two parts here. So bring to front and then subtract. Select that one there, bring to front and subtract. Okay, so now if we have a closer look at this, We can see it's a very good selection, but the best way to test it is to place it on top of the other image. So I'm going to use my move tool and just drag this whole periscope onto Grand Canyon and then let go, and we can see how it turned out. So we can place it here, and if we zoom closer, we can see how good the details are. We can always adjust this later, because the best thing about working with vector mask is that you can always select each of your paths individually. So we could refine this even further by adjusting each of the anchor points. But in general, what I wanted to make sure you understand is that using vector shapes, ellipses, rectangles, and a bit of the pen tool, you can create very professional selections in case you are working with something that's very geometric and has hard edges. In the next video, I'm going to show you another example, still using vector mask, but an example which will almost purely rely on the pen tool.